I'm going to be walking through how to extract some data from IPUMS and then bring that into R. I'm going to use an example from one of the IPUMS health surveys, but any of the surveys will work very similarly. So I'm going to go into get data from this particular survey, and then to create an extract, you could either do select data or get data to get you to the same spot, which is this interactive. You can think about this as sort of the store of variables, and each of these drop downs has those variables organized into their kind of groupings. There's household or person. That tends to be true across all of the surveys. And then they're grouped into things like demographics, socioeconomic status, and then these are health variables that are particular to this data set. So another way to go through and find the variables that you want is if you know that where it will be in the alphabet rather than where it will be in this kind of organizational system, you can use this A to Z, or you can also search. So if we searched for age, it's going to search the name, the value, the label, etc. And often the thing that comes up first is probably more or less what you want. So here I'm just going to add this to my cart by checking that plus button. And if we went into core demographic, variables, age is at the top. Let's also get sex, which is how they measure sex or gender. They use it interchangeably, which is a different conversation. Let's say sexual orientation, and let's just leave it there. I think that's fine. If we say view cart, then there will be this sort of warning that says add samples to create data extract, add samples to create data extract. The terminology here, variables are the way that we think about them in class, variables being the response or the explanatory variables. These will be the columns in your data set. The samples are essentially, for most of these data, going to be a specific year, or theoretically you could select multiple years. I'd strongly encourage you just to pick the most recent year where there's data available. So the sample is the 2018 sample, or the 2018 version of these data. Submit sample selections. So now we have a cart. And IPUMS puts in a bunch of stuff. Remember that we only selected these last three variables. There's a bunch of different things that I'm going to have it take out of the cart. IPUMS has assumed that we will want a bunch of these variables that are, in fact, useful for a variety of more sophisticated statistical analyses that we aren't going to be using. I am going to keep in this person ID. I think in most cases there's probably a unique identifier kind of variable that is really critical to have, because that will help you to understand what the observation is, or the row of your data. So then let's create a data extract. Often this is a place where I'm already signed in, but if I wasn't, it would prompt me to sign in. And then in this case, this is sort of like reviewing your cart before you click purchase. So we have one sample or 1 year. We have 4 variables, and you can ask them to be shown. The data format you just leave basically as is. And then what's helpful here is to describe your extract. So let's say that this is age, sex, and sexual orientation. And the reason for doing this is that, especially if you've forgotten a variable, or you want to extract some just to practice and then you want to go back later, you can do that, but it's helpful to know what's included in your extract. So then we're going to say submit extract. Now this is a process that happens where then it will take a couple minutes probably for this to process. I tend to just kind of give it a minute, and then we'll refresh. And IPUMS will also email you, so you can check your email as a way to know when the data are available. You'll see here that I have a number of extracts going back to sort of spring of last year. I think they probably keep maybe the previous year. One of the things that's useful to note here is that you can these submissions time out after, I believe, 72 hours. And so if you made a data extract, you submitted it, either something went wrong, the file got deleted, something happened, you can go back and you can resubmit that data extract, and then it gives you the exact same thing that it had given you before. It just doesn't keep them live for 72 hours. The other thing you can do is to revise a data extract. So this would be helpful if we only have age, sex, and sexual orientation here. So let's say we wanted to come back and we had figured out what our response variable was going to be. We could just revise this data extract and build on it, essentially. So I'm going to refresh here, and I bet that it's available. So it turned from that gray processing into download.dat. So what we need here are two different files. We need this download.dat, which is essentially just the link to download the data, and it's in a file format called .dat. So I'm going to click on that, and that's just going to take that into my downloads file. Then the second thing that we need is a codebook, and there's two different versions of the codebook that are essentially just a matter of formatting. What we want are the DDI version, and specifically if you just click on this, it will open it up. But instead, what you want to do is right-click on this, or in the Mac case, use Control and click, and then use Save Link As to decide where to download this. So the name, leave it as is. It's really important that you don't affect the name, so that the name of the data file and the name of this codebook are the same. They have to be able to have the same name and be able to speak to each other. And within the file, it also assumes that the name is the same, so please don't rename this file. And then if you save that wherever you want to be saving it, then we can use R in our studio to pull that in. So let's within these this middle section, there's also code for each of the different kinds of statistical software of how exactly to bring those data in. So if we click on R, it's going to be pretty simple. Basically, there's two lines of code, in addition to a line of code that's essentially saying if you need to install the IPUMsr package, then it will install that package. So from here, we can go into our studio, and within so I'm using the desktop version, which is important. If you are using the server version, you would need to then upload both of these files, but they're already in my downloads file. And so I'm going to make this my working directory, and then I'm going to have copied and pasted this code. And what the working directory means is that it's just telling our studio where to find these files that will become included here in a second. This first line of code is just saying if that this is a required package, this ipumsr package. If you haven't installed it, it will, I think, install it here. And then this line of code is bringing in that data dictionary file. And within that data dictionary file, then it will know how to bring in the actual .dat file that's there as well. And this is where you'll see that this is where the naming convention, it becomes really important, so that it knows kind of internally how to do this. So then really quickly, it loaded the required package, and then it brought in those data, and you can see them up in the environment section. So we have about 72,000 observations with those four variables being the ID variable, age, sex, and sexual orientation. The ID variable, age, sex, and sexual orientation. And we can also open this up and see that the data are there. So each row is an individual, unique, identified person. They have an age, a sex, and a sexual orientation. There is also information about how to know what these codes are. So what a 2 or a 1 means, or a 0 or a 2 means. And we'll go through that in class. There are ways to bring those labels of what's a 2 and what's a 0 in really easily. And we'll do some more of that together in another week or so.